Hello and welcome back to Genesis Birthing and Living, listening to Black women. We are transitioning to Brown family birthing, and I'm your host, Shayla Brown, and I have with me
Hi, I am Raven.
Raven. Okay, thank you. Raven, can you just tell people a little bit about yourself, what you do, and what you'll be talking about a little bit today?
Yeah, of course. And I just gave my whole first name, but most people know me by Raye the doula, which is my business name. I am a mom. I am a content creator, virtual assistant, and a birth worker. I came to birth work by way of being a nurse first. So I'm also RN. Um, and then after I had my son, which we'll talk about my birth story later, I got into birth work, which is something that I was so passionate about. Life took me on a journey to get there, and I'm so excited to share more of my story.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Raven. So how many birth stories do you have?
So I have one birth story, and getting there was a journey. I was diagnosed with PCOS, endometriosis, and infertility before I was able to conceive my son. And actually, just getting those diagnoses was a journey. Like, I feel like in the birth community, we talk a lot about how providers don't listen to birthing people when they are pregnant, but we also need to address how they don't listen to us before we get pregnant, especially when it comes to PCOS and endometriosis. A lot of time, Black and brown people, we get looked at as if we're just seeking pain medication, or we're being overly dramatic, or there's no way things could be that bad when it relates to endometriosis. Then when it comes to PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome, if anybody is not familiar with the acronym, a lot of the symptoms of PCOS, they chalk it up to being just genetic. So if you're having trouble losing weight, instead of looking at your A1C and your insulin resistance, they just contribute it to, oh, it's just genetic. Or if you have like heavy cycles and things, or irregular cycles, the answer is always, oh, just lose weight and it will fix everything. And providers really don't want to listen. They don't want to run tests. They don't want to do any of the things. And this is why the studies are also showing that Black people with PCOS are having more cardiovascular issues than other people with PCOS. So we're having worse outcomes there too, which is a big part of why I do what I do. And I want to share my story because we need to talk about all. We need to talk about it all when we talk about people of color and our reproductive justice. So just getting the diagnosis of PCOS and endometriosis and infertility was a journey. And then I got the diagnosis, and the doctor was like, okay, well, this means that you'll never be able to have children without some type of assistance. And I remember very vividly, I was in my early 20s when I got the diagnosis, and he was like, I'm pretty sure by the time you hit 30, I'm gonna be doing a hysterectomy on you. And that's just what it is. And with endometriosis, the treatment plan is often just medication and surgery to remove the endometriosis. And he's like, you probably have to have this surgery a couple times, but I want to take you surgery on Wednesday. We'll get you scheduled, get your book. And I'm like, wait a minute, you just diagnosed me with all these things at one time. You're telling me I have to get a hysterectomy when I'm 30. I need to plan for IVF, and you trying to take me surgery on Wednesday? Like, my head was spinning, and I was just like, I can't do this. This is too much. And I walked away, and I was like, I don't have peace about this. I don't believe any of these words that was spoken over me. And there has to be another way. And from that moment on, I was like, I'm going to figure out how I can heal myself holistically. I believe God. I believe in holistic healing. And this is what we're going to do. And I remember they was calling me, trying to schedule me for surgery. I was like, I'm not coming. You could just stop calling me. I'm not doing it. And I went on a journey of holistic healing, learning how to balance my hormones naturally, get rid of inflammation within my body, learning all about my womb and womb care practices that have been lost. And I remember I was like, if I ever make it through this, I am going to help other people who are going through this as well. Like, I don't want any other sister to feel like she got to walk this journey by herself. And that's why I'm here doing what I do. Like, I don't just serve birthing clients, but also preconception and people who are trying to conceive or just trying to focus on womb wellness as well. And obviously, um, in 2017, I was able to conceive my son naturally without any type of IVF, IUI, any of that. And then I went on to have a natural hospital birth with him in 2018. And we were able to breastfeed successfully after people say that people with PCOS can't breastfeed sometimes. So we just beating all the odds around here.
Yeah, okay. You just said a lot of stuff. So first I want to ask, what was that timeline from when you were diagnosed to when you conceived your son? You probably said it, but can you say it again?
Yes. So I was finally diagnosed in 2016 and I conceived in 2017. But
Oh,
I had been fighting for a diagnosis since 2013. Like, I was still in
mm,
nursing school when I was learning about PCOS and researching it. And I went through like 4 providers before I moved from rural Georgia to Atlanta to find a provider that would listen and run tests
wow.
and stuff.
Wow. So can you give me some of those symptoms? Because you giving me my life over here. So and I'm sure there's some other people like
Yes.
me, but I'll say a little
Yes.
bit more about that in a minute. But can you just give us some of those symptoms that you experienced that led to your diagnosis or that led you to think maybe I have this condition?
Absolutely. So as far as the PCOS, I always had trouble losing weight. Irregular cycles. I would have like breakthrough bleeding, but I wasn't noticing any signs of like actual ovulation. So I knew that I had a hormonal imbalance. I struggled with anxiety, depression. There's this kind of dandruff that people with PCOS can get from like all of the hormonal imbalance. I had really bad dandruff, but my hair would be thinning. Um, and besides the fact that we was trying and nothing was happening, and but the also thing with me is that when I was younger, and this should have been a red flag from the beginning, when I was younger, I was told I was pre-diabetic, right? And one of the main things with people with PCOS is insulin resistance. So why nobody put 2 and 2 together for me, the math is not mathing.
Mm,
um, which is the insulin resistance is ultimately what really wreaks havoc on your body, right? Because those unstable blood sugars contribute to so many other health problems. So it's like clear as day that I had PCOS, but all doctors don't assess the same. So I had lab work done one time. She only drew one specific lab. She just was like, I'm gonna draw labs, and I got it back. And she drew like, maybe it was like my thyroid hormone or T4 or something. She was like, oh, well, it's normal, so you don't have PCOS. She didn't do an ultrasound. She didn't look at my ovaries. If she did, she would have saw the little cyst looking things in there. If she would have drew my actual A1C or anything, but she didn't do anything. She didn't look at my progesterone, which was low. She didn't look at nothing but one thing. It was like, oh, you're fine.
thank you for sharing that. And I asked because another thing that stood out to me about your story is I have a similar story that I was having trouble conceiving. I never formally diagnosed with anything, but hearing you, I'm starting to wonder, did I have PCOS too? You know what I mean? Never diagnosed, going to several doctors, not understanding what's going on in my body. And so I know there are other women out there who are probably wondering, am I crazy? You know, people start to look at you like you're crazy, or
Right,
be like, well,
right,
you could try again, or maybe it's not that bad, or maybe it's nothing, or, you need to, like you said, lose weight.
right.
And so it's comforting to hear that it could be
Absolutely.
connected to something with a name,
Absolutely.
um,
Yes, absolutely. And PCOS is very common. Like, the statistics say like 1 in 10 people have PCOS, but I'm sure that it is even more common than that because so many people go undiagnosed, right?
mm,
So if we're looking at the people who are diagnosed, I'm sure it's more like 1 in 5 or 1 in 8 because hormonal imbalances are so common and we are not taught like what that looks like. We aren't really taught what our cycles are supposed to look like. It's kind of like, don't get pregnant, don't get pregnant, don't get pregnant. Nobody ever teaches you about ovulation or anything. And then you hit a certain age and everybody like, where the baby's at? And nobody ever taught you how to make
Right.
or nothing. So I mean, there's a lot of education that needs to be done so that we know, like, okay, what are the symptoms of, or what are the signs that I'm having healthy cycles? What does healthy blood look like? What does healthy mucus look like? Like all of the things that we don't know. And then the same with endometriosis. A lot of people go undiagnosed with endometriosis thinking that nausea during your cycle, throwing up, not being able to move, extremely heavy bleeding, extremely painful cycles, bleeding through pads, bleeding through everything. Like, we think this is normal. Like, we just think, oh, I just got a heavy cycle. And it's like, no, you should be able to still live and function on your cycle. And that's not something that I was able to do. Like, I was confined to the bed or the bathroom floor. And that's not normal, but people said it was.
Yeah, I think now that you said that, it might have been endometriosis because my symptoms were more like that. Very nauseous, heavy periods, acne, just debilitating cramps. Yeah. So
Yes.
yeah, but I was never, it was like, what are you talking about?
Right.
Yeah, you're right. So what are births like in your family? Is this something that, because you said people think that this is normal, is this something that now that you think like, oh, auntie such and such had this, or my mom, that's what's wrong with you, or is this something common in your family?
So I absolutely think that there's history of both of these in my family, but my mom, I was a preemie, so there was that. And when my grandma talks about her births and how small they were, I'm thinking there's a history of having premature babies in my family, but as far as cycles, they had the heavy cycles in that too. And I do know that my grandma also had a hysterectomy pretty young. So did you have endometriosis? Probably so. Also in my family, it was kind of we just do what the OBGYN or the doctor says do. So for me, when I got pregnant with my son, I all of these things were normal. I thought like preeclampsia was normal. I thought being induced was normal. I thought not being able to function while you were pregnant was normal. Like one of my aunts had actually been on disability when she was pregnant, like got a handicap sticker because her pregnancy was so rough. So I thought all of these interventions and things was normal. And then I started learning like, this is not.
Sorry, tried to unmute. Thank you for sharing that. And I just want to pause here to say, can you tell people where to find you, because this is some really great information, and I'm sure we're not going to get to all of it. And I know people are going to want to get more. They're going to want to ask questions or utilize whatever services you offer. So can you tell us where we can find you?
Absolutely. You can find me on Instagram at Raye the Doula. That's RAYE the Doula. On Instagram, that's my website. Kind of play with TikTok here and there, but I fully haven't mastered it. So just follow me on Instagram and you'll stay in and know everything that I'm doing.
Okay. And I will link all of Raven's stuff, under this video, but I just wanted to say that at this point to let you know that she is accessible. And I know we're not going to get to all the things that she knows and that she could help us with. So I just want to remind you that you can always find her to get more information.
Thank you.
Okay. So, wow, that's so what was your birth like? Was it premature as well? Was your baby premature as well?
Okay. No. So I was so gung-ho when I was like praying and writing out my affirmations and everything about my birth. I was like, just please don't let me have a premature baby. I don't want to go through the NICU. I knew that I really wanted to breastfeed because I was a public health nurse. And so I was learning about all of the benefits about breast milk and chronic health conditions, which obviously I'm passionate about preventing and changing that narrative about our community. So I was like, okay, I know if you go into the NICU, you can't do the skin to skin like you want to. It's not as beneficial for the breastfeeding journey. So that's all I wanted. And then as I started learning more about interventions and things that I didn't want to happen during my birth, that's when I started really to get into my birth planning mode. And I got a doula. I had a midwife, and that practice was racist. So I ended up having to switch practices at like going into my third trimester. But I ended up delivering with a beautiful Black midwife at a new practice inside the hospital. I labored at home with my doula, and I was like 8 centimeters when I got to the hospital. So I basically showed up to the hospital to get through triage, get in the room, and push pretty much. Um, Looking back, I do wish that I would have been able to have like a water birth at a birthing center. But just because I didn't really learn about home birth midwives until midway financially, I wasn't able to do the home birth. And because of my weight, I did not qualify for the birthing center in Georgia, which is a whole nother topic that I want to talk about. We'll have to do a part 2 for that one. So my pre-pregnancy BMI disqualified me from our birthing center. So I settled for doing the hospital birth. Yeah.
Raven, your story has so many elements. It's like you have lived every Black woman experience
Yes.
that there is to live.
Yes.
I feel like you need to write a book. This
Yes.
is
You are not the first person to tell me that. And I don't even think that it'd be registering to me how many things I went through and just overcame. Like it was just like, okay, well, obstacle, we're gonna have to jump over. We gotta keep going, we gotta keep moving. I mean, even with the practice that I ended up transferring to, because I was transferring in late, like with my first appointment there, they were like so rude and mean. It's like, have you even had any prenatal care? Like, why are you coming so late? And I'm like, well, if you look at my records that took forever to transfer me over here, you'll see that I've been having regular prenatal care. And then she's like going through taking my history, doubting me if I knew that I really had endometriosis, doubting me about the PCOS. And I'm telling her like, oh, I don't do well with doctor's offices. I don't like it just because of all of the infertility stuff that I went through and doctors not listening to me. Like my heart starts racing. My blood pressure is a little elevated. This is not my normal. She's like, how do you know what your normal is? And I'm like, ma'am, I'm a nurse. Like you trying to check me by my blood pressure? So, and then when she found out I was a nurse, it was like night and day. And I was like, no, treat me how you be treating everybody else. So I really know. So when I just think about my journey, it was a lot. But I am glad that the birth went smoothly. Breastfeeding did not. Whole nother story. I felt like lactation in the hospital really wasn't trying to help me. And it was difficult not seeing people that look like me as far as like lactation support. And I didn't have family that knew much about lactation either because they just formula fed. But I needed to go through that experience to help me remember back that my first goal was to become a lactation consultant anyway. Like I wanted to be involved in birth work anyway, and it just helped me to fuel my passion to be like, girl, you got to do this because people need you out here. Like we need lactation consultants that are our color. And then I had learned what a doula was through my doula, and I was like, okay, well, I'm becoming a doula too because we need it out here in these streets, especially in Georgia where our maternal mortality rate. So my experience just pushed me to go forward.
sorry, I'm muting and unmuting so I don't interrupt you. There's so many things about your story. But anyways, so can you tell us about the birth, the actual birth? How did you navigate that? What were some of the obstacles that you encountered? Your victories? Just tell us about what that looked like.
Okay, definitely. So my birth, I remember I went into labor early in the morning. I was in denial because, like I said, my thing was I just don't want to have a preemie. So I was almost 40 weeks pregnant when I went into labor. The due date was like June 6th, and he was born on June 4th. So 39 weeks and some change. I was in denial. I was like, oh no, this can't be it. Because remember, I had endometriosis. So I was used to extremely painful periods. And everybody was like, labor is worse than periods. So I'm chilling. So I'm like, this cannot be it. So I'm just going through it at home, listening to some music, really sleeping, texting. And my friends are like, you you in labor? Like, what's going on? And I'm like, I don't think I could be in labor because it's not painful enough. Um, so my doula was like, you don't want me to come? Are you sure? Like, you saying these contractions are this consistent. Are you ready for me? And I'm like, no, I'll call you when things get intense because I'm just big chilling at home. So by the time I called my doula, and she got there, she was like, I'm looking at you. I'm looking at the contractions. If you don't want to have a home birth, we need to head to the hospital. Like, it's not even any point of me being here. And I was supposed to have a birth photographer and she was supposed to come over to the house. But because I didn't call them, and what I realize now is I didn't call them until I was basically in transition almost. So she was like, well, I'll just meet you at the hospital. So I head to the hospital. They didn't let my doula obviously in triage. She had to wait until I got to the room because you can only have one person in triage. I know. So I had my son's dad in there with me. He was doing all the things that the doula told him to do. Thankfully, I didn't get a lot of pushback from the triage people. I had my printed off birth plan. It was like, oh, most of this is just our practice. They were like really amazing with everything. And I'm so grateful for that. Got me all hooked up, got to the room. And then there was this midwife that I didn't like. I had already encountered her at the practice one time, but luckily I got there at shift change. So she was about to leave because she immediately came in the room and she was like, so your water hasn't broken yet, so we're going to need to take care of that. And I'm like, we ain't taking care of nothing. What are you talking about? Like, why are you trying to come in here with interventions and I'm doing just fine? So thankfully she left and the Black midwife that I absolutely love came in there and she was like, okay, so what do you want to do? And I'm like, I just want to chill with my doula and let's see where things go. And she was like, okay, call me when you need me. So we labored in there a little bit. The contractions were getting stronger, but my water hadn't broken and I was getting tired. And I'm like, I want this to be over. So I did consent to the midwife breaking my water. And then almost immediately after she broke my water, it was time to push. I remember pushing like 3 or 4 times. And then he was out. And that was it. I felt so like relieved because I was obviously nervous about birthing in the hospital as a Black person, but I felt empowered that I stuck to my plan and made educated decisions about what I wanted to do. I did tear. Um, that was like a want moment, obviously, because who wants to tear? Who want to have to get stitches? Because that is the worst part, especially if you don't have an epidural. Then you get this little numbing stuff, which that did nothing for me. So I had to get stitches. So that interrupted like my bonding golden hour type thing. But I still feel like the labor and delivery, how it happened exactly how I wanted to. I was able to just labor at home and be comfortable and do my own thing for so long was definitely what I wanted to do. And that happened.
That's beautiful. That is beautiful. I mean, just a tear in the middle of a Black woman coming out of the hospital with just a tear is a victory. Okay.
Yes.
So what position were you pushing in?
Okay, so this is the kicker. And I'm looking back like, what was wrong with me? So even in my birth plan, I wrote, I want to deliver on all fours. I'm on all fours in the bed, push, almost getting ready to push. And I'm just like, I can't do this. I want to lay down. Even though in my head, I'm like, you don't want to lay down. That's not what you want to do. And my doula is like, you don't want to try this? You want to try this? And I'm like, no, I just want to lay down. So I gave birth on my back. The thing that I said I did not want to do. Like something was clearly not computing for me. And I don't know what that was. And also I knew in my head, you need to push with the contractions. Like let your body do most of the work. And something in me was just like, push as long and as fast and as hard as you can.
Did you feel like you were being rushed? Like, did you feel like the staff or did you just feel rushed?
Looking back, I think I had my own mental stuff going on, and I didn't feel like safe or as comfortable anymore. Maybe I felt too vulnerable, and I was like, I don't like this feeling. I'm ready for this to be over. So I'm ready to get this baby out as fast as I can, so that this feeling can be over, because this is very uncomfortable. Like, that's what I think when I think back to my story, because like I mentioned, I was in transition and my water hadn't broken and the contractions was just so strong. And I feel like at that point, mentally, I was like, I'm not sure I'm ready for this pregnancy experience to be over, because I don't know if I'm gonna get to do it again because of the infertility history. And so then when she broke my water and it was time to push and it was finna be over, it was such a vulnerable feeling that I was like, okay, I gotta get through this. I gotta hurry up. I just gotta do it. That's what I think.
Yeah, that's understandable. All of that is I just feel like, yeah, all of it. It's also Black woman. I just and I can relate 100,000% to
Okay.
just about everything that you said here. So yeah. What would you say to a woman or a Black family who has to labor in the hospital? What are some tips you would give them to come out victorious?
Oof. Mm. I would say do your research on the facility that you are going into. So, like I mentioned, I had to transfer when I was from that one practice. And the reason I was with them is because to everybody else, they were like, oh, they deliver at this facility. This is the best place to deliver at. But then I'm looking at their C-section rates. I'm looking at their policies. I'm looking at the things that I want, and everything is opposite. So I don't need to go over there, because that's not the type of birth that I'm trying to have. I need to go over here to a facility where, oh, you want to do skin to skin, the golden hour, that's standard practice. So that's less that I got to push and advocate and fight for while I'm going through this experience, right? Like, I need to go somewhere where intermittent fetal monitoring is the norm. Like, I don't need to go to the facility where they're like, okay, you in labor, we're going to hook you up to this monitor, you got to be in the bed the whole time. That's not going to help my birthing experience, right? So I need to go where I'm gonna have to fight as least as possible for the type of birth that you want. I would say look for places that are baby friendly, but I feel like that label is just going out everywhere now. So just do your due diligence. Go on the hospital tours. I know it's kind of difficult now with the pandemic, but go on them tours, look on the inside, see what's up. Like, if you see the place got a nursery full of babies, then it don't seem like they support breastfeeding that much, because how you nursing in a nursery? Like, do your research, have a doula, and know what type of birth it is that you are going for.
Okay, those are all really, really great tips. We're coming up on time. So, in closing, I'll just ask, is there anything I guess you want to close out with? And is there anything you want to share with the audience that you're up to, particularly, specifically, and the products you got going? Or just last words for the people?
Yeah, absolutely. I just want everybody to know, especially if you're going through like PCOS and infertility or endometriosis, that you always have options. There's always support groups out there, so you don't have to walk alone, and just not to give up. Because I know it's such a hard journey when you are trying and trying and trying, and you're always getting negative after negative after negative. But don't give up. If there's anything you could take from my story, it's that miracles can happen every single day. And so just keep believing and fight for what you want. Make sure you follow me on Instagram, because I am working on like a community for people with PCOS and a course. So make sure you follow me to get all the details. And yeah, I'm always open for doula support, virtual support, all the things. And thank you so much for the opportunity to share my story. I can't hear you. I can't hear you.
Sorry, I done unmuted. No problem. Thank you for sharing. When I saw your reel on Instagram, I was like, I have to have this testimony because, like you said, PCOS is handled with surgery all the time. And I just, having the experience that I've had and, healing my infertility naturally without any surgery, without, taking parts of my body out. I just think it's so important to understand that we have that option and that our health is inextricably linked to our health. You know what I mean? And what we eat and what we put on our hair and our environment. So it's just good to hear that. And I just love the fact that you were able to conceive against all of these odds, which, the next work is working to lessen the odds, because it's a lot to get from where you were to get to the birth. And then on top of that, you got to get the birth you want. So we just have too much to do. You know what I mean? Just to get a baby earthside. Then you got to take care of the baby. You got to breastfeed. So we just need to get to a point where, gosh, some part of this process is easier,
Exactly.
Yeah. So I just want to thank you again. I'm going to close out. Thank you all for watching. I know you enjoyed this one. And if you have further questions, please comment underneath this video. I will make sure that Raven sees your comments and that she can come back and respond. But if not, you can always find her on Instagram, Raye the Doula. Am I right?
Is that me?
Okay. That's right. And I will link her website and all of that stuff under here as well. Please be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, definitely share, because I know somebody. If you're a Black person, if you know a Black person, somebody who has dealt with these hormonal issues with cysts and polyps and endometriosis and PCOS and infertility. So please share this episode. And that's all for this time. I will see you guys next time. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.